I learned late in life that some truths arrive without noise. They come the way dusk comes, slow and certain, changing the shape of things without asking permission. That evening, the television went dark before the sun did. When the room fell quiet, I understood something had ended, though nothing had been named. My name is Loretta Mayfield. I was 68 years old then, living on the south side of Columbus, Georgia, in a house that had known my footsteps longer than it had known his. I mention that now because age teaches you when to speak and when silence has already said enough. I had always believed love was steady, not loud or dramatic, just present, like a chair that never wobbles when you sit down. I believed loyalty showed itself in small, repeated acts. Respect, to me, meant listening even when nothing was being said out loud. That was the kind of love I carried. I was a wife, a mother, a woman who kept her word even when it weighed heavy. In my family, I was the one people called when things broke or went quiet. I thought that meant I understood endurance. I thought patience was the same thing as wisdom. I would learn the difference. That night, when he reached for the remote and turned off the television, his hand did not shake. He did not look angry. He looked settled. When he told me to get out, his voice was calm, like he was asking for a glass of water. I stayed where I was and said nothing. I had been married to Henry for 27 years. Not all of them easy, but none of them cruel. We built routines the way other people build fences, piece by piece, trusting they would hold. Supper at 6, news at 7, quiet after 9. We did not argue much. We learned early how to avoid sharp corners. I raised our children to adulthood in that house. I watched grandchildren learn to walk across those floors. I knew which boards creaked and which windows stuck in summer. When my sisters came by, they called it my place, not ours. Henry never corrected them. I never asked him to. I believed my place in the family was earned, not given. I cooked, listened, remembered birthdays, and kept stories straight. I did not ask for thanks. I did not keep score. I thought love noticed those things, even when it did not speak their names. Looking back, the unease did not begin with that night. It began earlier, quieter. Henry started pausing before answering simple questions. He would look at me as if deciding something privately. Sometimes he would leave the room when I entered, saying he forgot something he did not go back for. I told myself these were small things. Age changes people, work ties them. Silence, I believed, was kinder than accusation. I chose patience because it felt dignified. I chose waiting because I had always been able to outlast discomfort. I did not yet understand what waiting can cost. The days leading up to that night were ordinary. Laundry folded, dishes washed, groceries put away in the same order I had used for years. Henry spoke when spoken to. His voice stayed even. That steadiness confused me more than anger would have. It felt practiced, like he had rehearsed calm. One afternoon, I asked him if he was all right. He said yes without looking up. I asked if something was wrong. He said no, just tired. His answers were clean and closed, like doors gently shut. I stood there holding my question, unsure where to set it down. At church the following Sunday, he sat a little farther from me than usual, not enough for anyone else to notice, enough for me to feel it. When the choir sang, he did not hum along. I watched his hands instead. They were folded tight, knuckles pale. I told myself not to read meaning into posture. People carry burdens they do not share. Marriage teaches you restraint. It teaches you not to pry open every silence. I had lived long enough to know that forcing truth too early can make it hide longer. So I kept going. I cooked his favorite meals. I asked about his day. I listened to what he did not say. The pressure built slowly, like water behind a wall. Nothing cracked, nothing spilled, but I felt the weight of it pressing, patient and determined. The moment itself was not dramatic. That is what stays with me. We were sitting in the living room, the evening news murmuring about things that did not touch us. Henry reached for the remote and turned it off in the middle of a sentence. The room felt suddenly too large. He did not turn toward me right away. He stared at the blank screen as if it were still talking. Then he said, "Loretta, you need to leave." No anger, no apology, just a statement, settled and complete. My name sounded different in his mouth. I waited for more words. None came. I felt my breath slow instead of catch. Years of discipline held me still. I did not ask where I was supposed to go. I did not ask why. I had learned that questions asked in the wrong moment become wounds. I stood up when my legs told me to. I gathered a small bag without thinking much about what went inside. Henry stayed in his chair. He did not watch me. When I reached the door, I paused, not for him, but for the house. I touched the frame once. I spent that night at my sister Evelyn's place. She asked questions I did not answer. I slept lightly, listening to a ceiling fan I was not used to. I told myself mourning would explain things. I told myself silence could still be temporary. I had not yet learned otherwise. Morning came clear and unhurried. I drank coffee from a chipped mug and stared out Evelyn's window. I felt older than I had the night before, as if sleep had carried something away with it. Around 10, my phone rang. Henry's number lit the screen. I let it ring. An hour later, Evelyn came in from the porch and said there was a man at the door asking for me. I did not recognize the name she said. I felt a tightening then, not fear, but recognition. Some part of me had been waiting without knowing what for. He was younger than Henry, maybe in his early 40s. He stood straight, hands visible, voice careful. He said he was there to talk about the house, not ask, talk. He spoke as if the ground beneath him was already decided. I listened. I always listened. He explained things plainly. Paperwork filed, decisions made, timelines set. Henry had planned his words the way he planned his exit. This man was not a surprise. He was the continuation. I thanked him for coming. I asked him to leave. He did, relieved. When the door closed, I sat down slowly. I did not cry. I did not rage. What I felt was the sound of something dropping inside me, heavy and final. It was not the loss of a home. It was the loss of an illusion I had mistaken for shelter. I did not confront Henry. That surprises people when I tell it, but confrontation would have required believing there was something left to recover. The truth had already taken its shape. He had chosen his path quietly, carefully, without me. All that remained was my response. I had to admit things to myself I had avoided for years. That patience can be mistaken for permission. that silence can be convenient for people who benefit from it, that love, when it stops being mutual, becomes something else entirely. Naming that did not make it easier. I grieved privately, not just the marriage, but the woman I had been inside it, the one who thought endurance was always noble, the one who believed being needed meant being valued. Letting go of those ideas felt like stepping out of a familiar coat in cold weather. I stayed with Evelyn longer than planned. I took walks in the morning. I learned the sound of her house. I began to sleep through the night again. Peace returned slowly, cautious as a stray cat. I did not rush it. I had learned the cost of haste. I signed what needed signing. I packed what was mine. I did not ask for explanations that would not heal me. My boundary was quiet but firm. I would not beg for clarity from someone who had already chosen absence. That decision steadied me more than answers ever could. Life continued, as it always does, indifferent to our private reckonings. I found a small apartment with good light and neighbors who minded their business. I arranged my furniture the way I liked it. I cooked smaller meals. I learned new silences that did not bruise. Some things left with Henry: shared routines, certain songs, the sound of another body breathing at night. Other things stayed: my sense of order, my faith, my ability to sit with myself without flinching. Those were mine all along, I realized, just waiting. Friends asked how I was doing. I told them the truth that fit in conversation. I did not carry bitterness. It was too heavy and too late for that. What I carried instead was a sharpened understanding of myself. That felt lighter, even when it hurt. I thought often about that man who came to the door, not with anger, but with clarity. He was not the cause. He was the confirmation. The message had been sent long before he arrived. I had simply received it at last, fully and without excuse. Time did not erase what happened, but it placed it where it belonged, in memory, not in command. I stopped replaying the night in the living room. I stopped wondering what I might have said differently. Silence, I learned, can also be a form of self-respect. Now, when I look back, I do not measure my life by what I lost, but by what I finally refused to keep losing. There is a difference between being loyal and being erased. It took me many years to learn that distinction, and I learned it the hard way. I still believe in love. I still believe in patience, but I believe now that both require reciprocity to remain whole. Without it, they become habits that drain you quietly. No one teaches you that when you are young. Experience does, eventually, if you let it. I tell this story not to warn, but to witness. Some endings do not announce themselves with chaos. They arrive politely, asking you to step aside. What matters is whether you recognize the moment and honor yourself within it. I did, even in silence. The house I live in now has fewer rooms but more light. I know every sound it makes. I know when I'm at peace because nothing inside me argues. That is how I measure home these days, not by walls, but by the absence of dread. The truth I carry is simple and earned. When someone turns off the noise and tells you to leave, listen closely, not to their words, but to what your spirit feels when the room goes quiet. That feeling is trying to lead you somewhere honest.